place called Lee-Ho, folks.
One of the great whimsical songs of the last 40 years, Werewolves of London. Welcome back to the Basketball Show. I'm your host, Paul Sir. Along with Ryan Reed here on Sports 1440. You know what? The CEBL, the Canadian Elite Basketball League season, is just around the corner. And there have been some exciting announcements over the past few months, and one this past week dealing with ownership in the league. And who better to talk about what's going on in the CEBL than the co-founder of the league, Mike Morreale. Mike, thanks so much for joining us on the Basketball Show.
Well, thanks, guys. Pleasure to have you have me on.
So, Mike, talk about the big announcement this past week about the sale of it. I guess you would say the sale of the team or the purchase of the team out in the GTA. What took place and what significance does that have, in your opinion, on the CEBL?
Well, I think when you look back at our history and how we started and as a single entity, there always was that desire to, build this league to its highest and best value and then bring in the local owners as we have in Edmonton and in Winnipeg and Vancouver and in many other places to just really elevate those organizations in their own market. And we, under the original owner, Richard Petco, has done just an amazing job. Going into, this year, he still had 5 teams under his belt, and I was actively, searching for, proper ownership in a couple markets, specifically Montreal and Brampton, and I was just so fortunate that we found such great people to take them over and then continue to grow what Rich has developed. And, now I turn my attention to other markets like Ottawa and Saskatchewan, but bringing those independent owners, entrepreneurs, business people, connections to sport and media. It's all going to be great, not just for the local market, but for the CEBL itself.
Well, having been aware of and in my own small way involved in the CEBL since its beginnings, Mike, the growth obvious, the expansion obvious, the reach obvious, all good things moving, not always in sync, and no one knows that better than you, is that you are probably at the forefront of everybody out there trying to make sure that the landscape gets broader, bigger, more awareness built, and you've done a marvelous job of that. Now the league's expanded. Now the next step was to lengthen the season, and that has happened this year, hasn't it?
It has. That's a real reflection on the business and the growth of the business. When you first start, you have to be careful, I guess, in how many games you're playing and what your salary cap is and all the things that you just don't know. But as we've grown and matured and been successful, then all of those metrics that allow for that growth just lead towards decisions like adding more games. We're at a point in time where adding games is a good thing in our local markets. It's not a cost. It's a potential to be profitable and to play more basketball. We are constrained by, kind of the start of the season, the end of the season. We work as best we can within those parameters. So adding those games was fantastic, but also for those that have been paying attention or will see, when they look at our schedules, even the scheduling has gotten a lot better. Majority of games are Thursday through Sunday in home markets. Try to eliminate kind of the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday if we can. We can't always, but 75% of our games are Thursday through Sunday, and it's just better experience for the fans, better experience for everyone in the arena and the players and everyone involved.
No, Mike, one concern that people have expressed is that because of the placement of the season, and it is a summer season that has worked extremely well because it's its own unique season where you're not competing with, let's say, traditional basketball in the same way, but always competition because there's so many sports everywhere globally. But one of the challenges and that I know aware of is that you're butting up against the European Canadians in particular, but players, Americans playing over in Europe, their season bleeding into the beginning of the season, but also the demand for the return to overseas clubs at the end of the season. How does the CEBL view this challenge?
Well, I will say if you look at this year's schedule, it is identical to what we did in year one. So we kind of walked away from what we had built in year one and had to pivot because of, our year two was in a bubble, our year three was really not in front of fans. It was only a 14-game season. We slowly have crept back up. So we know the inherent risks. We've adjusted our salary cap a little bit differently and added some wrinkles to allow for maybe better player retention in certain parts of the year. And part of it is just a challenge that our GMs and coaches are going to have to face. It is a league that is transitional because we allow our players to go to summer league or to go to NBA tryouts. Those are really important, things, not only from my position, but when we're trying to attract players, they feel very comfortable knowing that the team in the league has their back and will allow them to continue to do or grow in their path. And they realize that if they can hit a NBA summer league, if that's what they're doing, or an NBA camp full steam playing competitive basketball, that is a benefit to them. We've seen, our players be able to take advantage of that, whether it's Jackson Rowe playing this year in Golden State or A.J. Lawson playing now at the Raptors or with the Mavs. And, of course, those are two Canadians, but all are Americans as well. So, there still are some wrinkles to be looked at, and we have to play this season to figure it out. I'm not too concerned about the front end of the season because there's always been a bit of hangover. The playoff or the players in the bigger leagues that are in the playoffs are likely coming end of May, beginning of June. I think the real interesting thing, we'll see what the back end holds and the retention of our top players, because that's obviously important, very important. And there's going to be probably a little bit more reliance on a G League type player as well, whether they're Canadian or American, just because there is no overlap in those seasons.
For our listeners, Mike, talk about the required structure of the team in terms of how many Canadians, how many Americans are allowed on each franchise.
Yeah, so we have 14-man rosters, of which you can either have a 10 or 12-man active roster. And you have to have, you can only have 4 Americans on that active roster. So if you're playing with a 12-man roster, there's 8 Canadians. If you're playing with a 10-man, there's 6. So majority of teams will be 10, maybe 11-man, just because the FIBA game's a little bit shorter, and you likely won't go that deep on your bench. So, it is still, and it, in my mind, will always be the predominantly Canadian league that was built for all the fundamental reasons as to why. So this league generally plays at above 70% Canadian talent, and we mandate that 2 Canadians start on the court at all time or are on the court at all time. And those of you that have watched our games, and I know you've been there since the beginning, Paul, so you can speak to it better than anybody. I mean, the separation between, a non-Canadian and a Canadian talent is hard to define.
Unrecognizable now.
Yeah, unrecognizable, exactly. And maybe in the beginning it took some time, but now it's, we've really attracted as many top Canadians as possible. And it's a real, amazing product that keeps getting better because of the talent on the court.
Absolutely. And for anybody that goes to a Stinger game, specifically in Edmonton or Surge down in Calgary, after you've been there, one of the things I always hear from people after they've gone, particularly for the first time, is, Mike, my God, I didn't know that there was this much good basketball to be played. I had no idea how good this would be. And Mike, I think one of the things that I admire the most about what your efforts, and of course the both financial and all the support that Richard Petco has offered to this league, the vision being to drive this and grow this league while still developing Canadian talent and ingraining the franchises into the community. It's really starting to bear fruit, and I can talk specifically in Edmonton because now it's very rare that I talk to anybody and they have no awareness of who the Edmonton Stingers are. And that I think is a real tribute to you. Talk about the television now. With the expanded league, that must mean that there's expanded television coverage on TSN as well.
Yeah, we continue to grow our relationships on the broadcast side. TSN is going to carry 127 games this year, all live on the TSN Plus platform, and then 17 of those games, including all the playoffs and championship weekend, will be on the linear network, so on TSN 1 through 5. And then Game Plus, who just happens to be, the guy that runs Game Plus, or Anthem Sports Entertainment that runs it, is now our new owner of Brampton, who you mentioned earlier, Leonard Asper.
Yep.
So we'll have upwards of 50 or 60 games on their Game Plus channels or Game TV channels. And, of course, our own CBL Plus platform that goes all over the world, and their partners in the U.S. And it is, I think, I know for a fact that the broadcast piece is something we're really looking to continue to grow. We're in our final year of our agreements with TSN. And, even in the last 3 years since we started there, the landscape has changed in terms of broadcast and how people, continue to move towards platforms like Paramount Plus or Amazon Prime or Netflix or other streamers for live sports. And it's been pretty profound. So we're open to a bunch of different looks at it and just continue to grow and have more people see what we do.
Mike, when I'm at the Edmonton Stingers game getting ready for the broadcast, I look over and I often see Mike Morreale and I go, this guy's he has to be cloned, or he has identical twin or triplets, because I have no idea how you get to so many games. And then I'm watching something on TV and I see Morreale there. So I'm still convinced you're in two places at once. Okay, I'm going to give you, as we start to run out of time, but Mike, what's the most exciting aspect of the CEBL? Now, I'm giving you the floor with your salesman hat on. Tell our listeners why they need to get out and watch the CEBL.
It's just a tremendous level of entertainment on and off the court. I don't think there's a dull moment from the minute you walk in, a 2-hour window of our games, from the music to what happens on the big screens and around the arenas, and what happens on the court and the dunks and target score time, which inevitably leads to these fantastic finishes, almost guaranteed on a game-by-game basis, and the excitement and enthusiasm of being with members of your community and rallying around, your team. And I think that has really morphed over time. The CBL has become the team of that market, rather than people showing up and just trying to figure out who we are. Now they're Stingers fans. Now they're Sea Bears fans. Now they're Honey Badger fans. And that fandom is growing, and it makes for just a great environment with all those things wrapped up in one big bow.
Well done. Sold certainly to me, and I know to a lot of folks as well. Really excited about the upcoming CEBL season, Mike. Kudos and thanks to you, Richard Petco, and all the hardworking people in your head office, and all of the franchises around the country, as they have brought Canadian basketball, true professional basketball, to Canada. You have filled that vacuum admirably. So I really appreciate you making the time today, and look forward to talking to you again once the season gets started.
Well, much appreciated, Paul. You've been a great advocate of Canadian basketball in general, and I'm just thrilled that you give me the opportunity to talk about it.
Mike Morreale, co-founder of the CEBL, Canadian Elite Basketball League, joining us here on the Basketball Show. Folks, get your season tickets for the Edmonton Stingers. You will never regret it. It is the best value in town. The entertainment, as Mike pointed out, when you go to the game, you're going to be entertained, not just with the play on the court, but just the whole show. For the family, so accessible, so much fun. Hall D over in the Expo Center is a beautiful viewing facility. There's not a bad seat in the house. Get out, support the Stingers, make this the best year that we've ever had in Edmonton. We're going to take a break right now. When we come back, we're going to talk with Tori Hill. She is the head coach of King's University here in Edmonton, just coming off a marvelous season. And we're going to talk about the season, what her career's been like, about women in sport, and many, many other things here on the Sports Leader, Sports 1440.